Mouth breather. I am completely out of breath, plastered with sweat, and generally exhausted from doing a huge amount of rearranging of my numerous possessions. In my lifetime, I've accumulated a ridiculous amount of stuff which has become a millstone around my neck, which I cannot stand the thought of getting rid of, because if I paid $2 for a used VHS tape back in 2002, even if I haven't watched it since then and now have the movie on DVD, a part of me still wants to hold on to that VHS tape as a memento of the fact that I bought it back then, if I have any vague memory of where and when and what I was feeling at the time. I have this need for possible mementos to make up for my rather deficient memory, which that's an accidental segue into what I was wanting to talk about, which is important enough that I'm doing this now and not risking that I'll forget while I take a shower. There are not a lot of subjects where I agree with the social justice type that people who are straight and white and male are born with all sorts of privileges that everybody else doesn't have, and this gives them an unfair advantage that makes them need to give all of their shit away to literally everyone who isn't a straight white male. Which, you know, that's how you achieve reciprocity, right? If somebody has $10 more than you, then they need to give $100 to every single person who they had $10 more than. That's how you achieve equality. But anyway, there is one quote-unquote privilege, which, well, not even the quote-unquote. This is me saying this is a privilege. There is one that I can think of which, by virtue of being a straight white male in the social layout that we currently have, I do consider this to be an advantage in my own weird backwards way, which is, if I call myself inferior in some sense, that people will allow me to have that. Nobody will take away from me my self-ascribation, is that a word? Me ascribing to myself the fact that I am inferior in certain respects. That specific word, I'm using that word rather than something like disadvantaged, which the social justice types would prefer, because I'm a big believer in using language that has punch and bite, just the most impactful terms, which is one of the reasons why I swear a lot, and I refuse to water down my language by censoring my swear words, because if you do that, you remove the intensity, and it's like watering down your medicine. The medicine has all sorts of unpleasant side effects. It's going to suck for a while after you take the medicine. You're going to have all sorts of problems. But the point of the medicine is that it's supposed to make you better. Not necessarily feel better, but be better in a tangible, measurable effect. And so I feel that on the social level, things like swear words and extremely pointed arguments, like, for instance, originally actually calling people racist when a lot of them genuinely were, being more polite would have meant it was less effective and less good at getting rid of the actual racism that existed back in 1850 or maybe even 1950. The fact that nobody is willing to admit that maybe that is actually gone and we can stop doing it, that's what causes the problem. But so swear words and cutting insults and anything impactful like that is socially a form of medicine. It is an attempt at scouring away damaged tissue from the body of society and flushing out bad ideas and opening up room for new growth. So the word inferior, if you call another person inferior by virtue of their birth, then that is a dick thing to say to them, and they're not likely to listen to you, and they're going to think you're an awful person for calling them that. But if you call yourself inferior, you are attempting to impress upon yourself the fact that there is something legitimately wrong with you that you cannot ignore. And so the infantilizing attitude that society has towards women and quote-unquote minorities and anybody on the LGBTQIA plus whatever. I think that's all the letters they've put in the acronym, but there might be some new ones that I haven't heard about in my couple of weeks of limited internet. So all of these people who are perceived as having a social disadvantage, and everybody wants to be nice to them, everybody wants to gentle their feelings, and everybody's terrified that they might commit suicide if somebody makes them feel bad, those people are prevented from giving themselves a dash of cold water right to the face and a swift kick in the rear to shock them out of their comfort zone and make them lose their complacency and make them confront whatever is actually causing them problems in their life. So, you know, the old saying about how you can't break an addiction until you've hit rock bottom, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So that might require looking at yourself and saying that you are inferior just by your very nature. You were born with a disadvantage that you cannot change, and you have to accept that this limits what you can accomplish in your life. And so 100% to be clear, dear YouTube bots, I am not saying this about anyone other than myself. I am not saying any person is inferior. That is very specifically and exclusively for them to decide. It is, like I said, I will repeat once again, it is a dick move to call anyone else inferior, and it is not going to work. A person, if a person bends the wrong way and has pain in their leg as a result of their own actions, they might profit from pain in the leg because it is going to teach them that they shouldn't bend in that way. If you just come up and kick them in the shins, they're not going to learn anything. So attacking someone, whether physically or with words like inferior, is not likely to promote any sort of growth in them because it comes from an outside source. They will reject any sort of perception of maybe I should actually take something away from this because they can just blame it on you being a dick, which in all probability is the case if you're doing that kind of thing. So only when self-ascribed does a label like inferior have any sort of positive healing potential. But my point in bringing all this up is the fact that if you are a supposedly disadvantaged person and you call yourself inferior in this sense and somebody else finds out about it, the chances are very good if that person is even a little bit in the SJW direction, and heck, I myself am a little bit in it. I have a little bit of the desire to make things better. Almost nobody doesn't have some of that. So if that person is at all prone to sentimentality and sympathetic nature, then they will hear you saying, "Oh, I'm inferior," and they'll be like, "No, you're not. Don't run yourself down. Don't talk to yourself like that." Whether that's true or not is something that I debate a lot. I think that if you have a lot of negative self-talk, or to take the extreme example, if you're physically self-harming, if you're a cutter, that's causing long-term harm. I think you're weakening your resistance to things, and then it becomes society's problem that you can no longer resist things. So, if you're stripping off your armor and then you're going and complaining about the fact that you've got for an extreme example, let's say that you intentionally peel some of the skin off of your knees and make your skin as thin over your knees as possible, and then you trip and fall on the sidewalk and you skin your knee all the way open and it's bleeding and you're in agonizing pain. When you go to the doctor and the doctor applies treatment to your knees, they might have needed to use less medicine on you, medicine that's in a finite quantity and that costs you money and that has various side effects. You might have needed less medicine if you didn't intentionally thin the skin over your knees. That's a really bizarre example, as is par for the course with me. But so don't there's an open question of whether it's legitimate to run yourself down. But my point is, you are more free to run yourself down if that is maybe a beneficial thing to do because you are white and straight and male, because everybody, because of their complete lack of sympathy for you, the social mainstream is not going to take that away from you. They are not going to say that you don't have the right to run yourself down. So, in the weird backwards way where society thinks straight white men have all the privileges and is not willing to let them have anything good, one good thing that they get to have is the quote-unquote bad thing that actually has good effects, which is being allowed to criticize yourself. I think a lot of the higher-level insanity of the SJW community comes from the fact that if they criticize themselves, all of their friends and all of their so-called friends and loved ones and fans in the internet community are all going to come have a kindness pile-on and try to make them feel better about themselves, which, if they intentionally skinned their knee, is just going to make them more prone to go out and intentionally skin their knee again because they were told, oh, that's not a bad thing. And in a Pavlovian way, if you hurt yourself and then it gets you a lot of sympathy, you might like the sympathy so much that you decide to intentionally hurt yourself again. This is Munchausen syndrome, is the medical term for this kind of thing, and there's probably, and there's also Munchausen by proxy, which is where you want to, you have another person who you feel responsible for, and they get hurt, and you encourage them to get hurt so that you can bask in the sympathy of people adulating, or people coddling your child and then adulating you because you're such a good provider for this poor disadvantaged child, or whatever. So Munchausen by proxy, these are two syndromes that happen among a certain group of people where they get so fond of the positive attention that comes to them as a result of them hurting themselves that they want to hurt themselves more. There's all these really backwards, inside-out, twisted, multi-layered things that happen with people. Very, very disturbing stuff. Anyway, I think I've rambled on long enough and gotten the point out. So, if you're a straight white male, and even if you're not, but especially if you are, given that YouTube hasn't noticed me yet, but if it ever does, it will probably have a dislike of me because of the fact that I am speaking the wrong thoughts. You know, I'm not being a good duck speaker for the Big Brother party. Anyway, it would be a sweet irony if YouTube slammed this video for hate speech because I said a negative thing about straight white males, and the bot doesn't take context into account. So, with all those disclaimers, assuming you're an SWM, if you are tempted to feel inferior about something about yourself, such as my own lack of memory and general absent-mindedness and physical clumsiness, these are all problems that I have, don't let anybody tell you that you don't have the right to say, oh, I suck for these reasons. You absolutely do have the right to do that, and the privilege of being able to say that and not have anybody feel compelled to give you a bunch of shallow, false sympathy is one of the few things that's actually an advantage about being an SWM. Can't really use SWM for this because it also means single white male. But well, these days, I think straight people are a lot more likely to end up single, given the chasm that is growing between the genders. I once read a rather horrifying sci-fi story about a gender-segregated future in which everyone was gay, and it tried to portray this very positively. I think the author was gay, or at least gay-friendly, but I should figure out what this is and read it again sometimes, because if it was written at all well, then it might have accidentally formed a really cogent social commentary. A good example of that kind of thing is the movie Demolition Man, which was written just to be a cheap action flick for Sylvester Stallone in the 90s, but accidentally it became a really cogent satire of the way gender relations would go in the future. I don't think any of the people making it realized how prescient it was going to be, but it is definitely something that I recommend. That idea doesn't come from me originally. I forget which of my various YouTube idols pointed me towards this movie originally, but having watched the movie with that in mind, I very much agree. It is super, super on point. And also, just fun. I'm a fan of Stallone, and it's one of his better roles. Alright, so I said like a minute ago I was going to end this video. Time for me to actually do that. Bye!